this really feels like an event. I mean, every time a new Batman film comes out, particularly a big standalone Batman film like this, it really feels like an event. It feels like this is something that everything is built towards and built around. The last time I got this kind of feeling from a superhero movie like this was The Dark Knight Rises. Obviously the final conclusion to Christopher Nolan's trilogy. But this is now the start of a new Batman series, The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, starring Robert Pattinson. And this film, ever since it was announced, I've just been incredibly excited about, because even though it is yet another reboot of the Batman series, something about this just felt different from day one. And now I've actually seen the film, this 3-hour epic, I can now confidently say right here, right now, this is a very different Batman film from what we've seen before. It is definitely worth the price of admission, and dare I say it, possibly the best Batman film we've seen yet. So like I say, this film has been quite a long time coming. Obviously with the pandemic, did get pushed back a couple of times, and I was just immensely anticipating this film. If you did see my top 10 most anticipated of the year, this was my number 2. And it hurt me to put it at number 2. I wanted to put it at number 1, but unfortunately, the nostalgia for Top Gun is still there. But with the Batman, this film, I was just so excited about it ever since they announced it. It just seemed like such a cool idea. And what really got me excited about this film, most of all, was the cast. And I'm not just talking about Robert Pattinson as Batman, but I'm also talking about literally everyone else. And now I've seen the film, looking upon this film and, as a final product, this is just such a great addition to the Batman mythos that if you've not seen it, you have to check it out. This review is not going to have any spoilers because I want to keep the surprise for you, because there's a lot to delve into in this film. Like I say, it's 3 hours long. It's quite an epic beast, but there is so much to delve into when talking about the Batman. But I'll dive in first of all by talking about the cast, because that's the main thing I do want to talk about. Firstly, of course, the man himself, Robert Pattinson, as Bruce Wayne and Batman. Now, Robert Pattinson obviously is quite an interesting case when it came to the casting, because, if you're kind of in the film Twitter space, this would have been a very exciting announcement for you, because Robert Pattinson is a phenomenal actor. If you've seen him in things like Good Time or The Lighthouse, anything else like that, High Life, The Rover, any of these films, he is just a phenomenal actor. Truly tremendous. And when he was cast as Batman, I, for one, was incredibly beyond excited, because I just thought that's such a cool casting. Like, it's such an interesting casting. So different to what I would have expected. But in the film itself, Robert Pattinson delivers a very different, very withdrawn, very reclusive performance, which kind of works. I think for this version of Batman they're going for, which, I'm getting the impression very much so from the film itself and also from Matt Reeves that this is very much a standalone Batman universe. This isn't in the DC wider universe. We know it's not a part of the DCEU, but, there are no plans to introduce, a Superman or a Wonder Woman into this universe. It's just Batman. This is a very dark, very, reclusive version of Batman who is kind of a bit of an emo goth. And I really enjoy that, because Robert Pattinson can play that really, really well. Robert Pattinson is really good at playing kind of reclusive weirdos. And when you think about it in the comics, Bruce Wayne really, at his core, is a reclusive weirdo. He does have this outer shell of being this, suave, sophisticated businessman, but inside, he really is this kind of dark, lonely kid who lost his parents at a young age. And the version of Bruce Wayne that Robert Pattinson gives us in this is that. Like, he's this very dark, very reclusive version who kind of sits on his own, doesn't really go out into the city of Gotham, to really front as Bruce Wayne. He's very much just Bruce Wayne as he is, which is very angry, and then the rest of the time, he's just Batman. And that is one thing to say about this movie. This is very Batman heavy. There isn't actually a lot of Bruce Wayne in this film. A criticism I have seen towards this is that the version of Bruce Wayne that we get in this, isn't the kind of version who fronts himself in Gotham. Kind of like what we got in the Dark Knight trilogy with Christian Bale's version, who kind of went out into the city and pretended to be kind of the philanthropist and stuff like that. We don't get that here. But what I will say is I feel like we will get that as the series goes on. I feel like this, being year 2 for Batman, which is what this is his second year of being Batman, I don't think Bruce Wayne has fully figured out how he is going to live all these different lives in one. I feel like he's still kind of living one combined life, really, and the only thing that separates him is the costume. Whereas I feel like as this version of Batman progresses and gets more mature and kind of gets older, he's going to learn to differentiate those different mindsets. But I think Robert Pattinson, as a whole, delivers not only a great emotional performance as Bruce Wayne, but also a great physical performance as Batman. He's great in both, and I'm really excited to see how this Batman grows and develops over this potential trilogy that we're going to get. And then we have Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, who is just fantastic in this. Probably the best Catwoman we've ever had. I'm pretty confident in saying that, actually. Very complicated, very cool, very sexy. Just everything you want from Catwoman is portrayed here by Zoe Kravitz. She's great. And I think that her sort of interplay with Bruce Wayne's very good. You know, she kind of has this kind of roguish, you know, is she an ally, is she not, which is obviously very Catwoman from the comics. She also kind of has a lot of sexual tension with Bruce Wayne, which you do need, or, well, actually with Batman, she doesn't actually really know he's Bruce in this movie, but it's, you know, you kind of have that sexual tension there between them, which is very cool, very interesting to see, and it's kind of a core element between Batman and Catwoman. You know, you need that sexual tension and that chemistry, and that is very much on display here. And again, I think she's a great character. She's really interesting, really well utilized in this, and really has an emotional kind of connection to the story, which kind of brings her in a really cool way. We also have Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobblepot the Penguin, which, when he was cast, I was like, okay, cool choice, because Colin Farrell can literally do anything. Like, he can do no wrong. But he is transformed in this film. And I'm not just talking about the makeup, because the makeup itself alone is phenomenal. Like, I did not see Colin Farrell in this movie whatsoever. This was not Colin Farrell. This was someone else. But, like I say, it's not just the makeup. Not only has he completely changed his look physically, but his performance. He didn't walk like Colin Farrell. He didn't talk like Colin Farrell. He didn't sound like him. This was a different guy entirely. He completely went into this character, and I loved that. And this version of the Penguin was really cool because it's really different to the other versions we've seen before. I feel like a lot of the live-action versions we've gotten of the Penguin have always gone very kind of out there with it. They've always gone very wild, very wacky. You know, when you look at like the Gotham version or the Danny DeVito version, they're always very over the top. And while Colin Farrell is over the top in this film, it's more of a lively performance. Whereas I feel like this version of the Penguin, unlike the others, is a lot more like the Penguin in the comics. You know, the Penguin in the comics isn't really insane. He's just kind of this good business guy who deals weapons and stuff like that. And he's a gangster in Gotham. He's not actually like insane. And that's what they give us here with this version of the Penguin. He's just kind of this crime boss in his early days. He's not really a crime boss yet. He's kind of working as an underling for Falcone. And I'm sure as this trilogy goes on, we'll see the Penguin rise in Gotham. We kind of get a hint at that at the end of the film. So I'm really loving the direction of this version of the Penguin because, again, they've not gone insane with it, which I think is a fresh take that this character really needed. But our main villain of this film is Paul Dano as the Riddler. And I was ecstatic when he was cast as the Riddler because that was inspired casting. If you've seen Prisoners, that was... I'm pretty sure Matt Reeves has seen Prisoners because that must have been where he got the casting from. Because that, if you've seen that film, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, inspired casting for this version of the Riddler. And I have personally always wanted to see the Riddler as a villain in a Batman film. And I'm not talking about Batman Forever because while that film was very much a product of its time and I think it has its own qualities, that version of the Riddler is just Jim Carrey. Like, that's all that is. I've always wanted to see a really classic kind of methodical version of the Riddler that, kind of similar to what we got in the Arkham games, I kind of wanted to see that adapted on the big screen, and I really thought Nolan was going to do it. I thought Nolan was going to do it in The Dark Knight Rises. I thought, you know, before Bane was announced, I thought that the Riddler was going to be the main villain of that movie. Obviously, we didn't get that. But in this film, we do get the Riddler, and while he's not quite what I wanted per se, what we did get, I loved. He is this crazy, psychotic serial killer who works in riddles. And that works so well for this world that they've established, you know, here with this version of the Batman. It is really quite terrifying. It's scary. And Paul Dano just delivers an unhinged, wild performance, which I really wasn't expecting. Like, I was expecting him to be quite menacing. I wasn't expecting kind of wild. And that's what we got. He's kind of walking the line between kind of being on the cusp of smart but borderline insane. And I think that's a really cool way to play the Riddler because he is kind of an insane character, really. He just kind of manages to keep his composure. But what I like about the Riddler in this is that he does kind of lose his composure a couple of times and he completely freaks out, and I really like that. But Paul Dano is phenomenal in this. I love it. I can't wait to see, potentially what his character does in the future. But here, he is just unstoppable, a force to be reckoned with, and a really great kind of foil for Bruce Wayne and Robert Pattinson as Batman. And a couple of other castings to talk about as well, who I also really enjoyed. I think that Alfred, played by Andy Serkis, really cool casting. I think he's a great Alfred, a bit more of a younger Alfred than what we typically get, but a really cool one nonetheless. He's not in the movie that much, but when he is there, he does deliver a really cool performance. And also, another one I really liked, a really surprising one. I mean, I was excited when he was cast, but I didn't realize he was going to have such a substantial role, is John Turturro as Falcone. Falcone has always been a very background character in these Batman films, like in the Dark Knight trilogy and stuff. He's never particularly a prominent character, but in this particular film, he's pretty prominent, and Turturro, who I've always loved, is really great as this character, like genuinely quite scary and very intimidating. And also, again, I think for this version of the Batman, for this version of Gotham that they've created, making Falcone such a prominent figure and such a grounded version of Gotham actually makes a lot of sense. He's kind of the big crime boss who kind of is, overseeing everything, And I think that works really well. And Turturro delivers a powerhouse performance. This is one of the best performances Turturro's ever done, in my opinion. I think he's phenomenal in this. And I loved the introduction of Falcone, where he went in this film, because it was just so different. And again, it really allowed the character of Carmine Falcone to shine like he never has before. Now, what I loved most about the Batman was its world. Not only was the casting absolutely phenomenal and filling the world with these incredibly well-cast characters perfect, but the world itself was also really, really strong and compelling. Gotham looked amazing. What I loved about Gotham in this was that it was very, very grounded and realistic, but it had this level of surreal nature to it, where you could kind of tell it didn't exist in the real world. It was kind of just slightly, it's almost like the Uncanny Valley, it existed just beyond that point of realism, and that was really cool for me. And also what I really appreciated was obviously the city of Liverpool and also Glasgow were mostly used as reference for Gotham in this. And as someone who lives relatively close to Liverpool and goes to Liverpool quite a lot, it was cool to kind of see little streets and locations and stuff that you could recognise as kind of being used as part of Gotham now. That was cool for me. Given the fact that they usually use a lot of American cities, like we've had like Chicago used in the past, and Gotham is often kind of modelled after New York, it was kind of cool to get more British Gothic cities involved. I thought that was a cool twist and a cool way to do it. So overall, this is by far the best version of Gotham we've ever seen. We've had some cool versions before. I did like Chicago being used in the Dark Knight trilogy and stuff, but this is by far the most fleshed out, characterful version of Gotham we've ever seen. And again, for this particular interpretation, it is beautifully done. And I just realised when talking then, I completely forgot about Jim Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. This version of Gordon is what I've always wanted from Gordon. Like, he is just a great foil to Batman, like a great partner for him. He's very prominent in the movie as well, by far the most prominent Gordon we've ever had. I mean, I really love the Gordon we got in the Dark Knight trilogy. He's great. But Jeffrey Wright is pitch perfect, like literally on the point. He is so good in this movie. And what I think is really helpful is that this film is a detective noir thriller. Unlike other Batman films, this is by far the most detective-focused Batman film we've ever had. So it's having Detective Jim Gordon working with a Detective Batman side by side, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And I love everything about it. And that kind of brings me on to my next point, which is that the reason why I loved the Batman so much is because this film really has the best version of everything in the Batman mythos we've seen on screen. It has, I don't know if it has the best Batman, possibly, but it definitely has the best Catwoman, best Penguin, best Falcone, best Gordon, best Gotham. It's just everything. Everything is perfect. And I think it just creates this world that is so phenomenal. Like I say, I'm not willing to say he's the best. I don't think Pattinson is necessarily the best Batman yet. I think he could be as time goes on. At the minute, I still think possibly... I really like Ben Affleck, personally. I thought his version of Batman was really cool, really well done. But I also think it's mainly only in Batman v Superman he's the best. So, I don't know. Bale is great. But I think Pattinson will grow into that. But everything else is literally the best interpretation of anything we've seen before. And that, for me, pretty much sums everything up. Like, if it literally delivers the best version of each of these characters near enough, the best version of Gotham, a great story, and overall, a fresh take. And that is what I really appreciate. I always enjoy a fresh take. I mean, I know if you saw my last video where I spoke about Uncharted, obviously I was talking about how I didn't want the fresh take, and that is like the one exception for me. But usually I enjoy a fresh take, and that's kind of what this was. It's a fresh take while also still feeling like Batman, and that's what's important. It nails both. And I think it's going to satisfy everyone. I think that, you know, people are going to watch this film. There really isn't much negativity surrounding the Batman. I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this film. I think a lot of people are really going to appreciate what it does. Only thing I can see, you know, perhaps some people not enjoying is it is a bit slow. Like, it is quite slow paced. It is a slow burn. Like I say, it is a detective thriller at the end of the day. And also, it is 3 hours long. So, you know, it's a slow film and it's long. But if you're on board with that, and if you're not going to be bothered by that, you're going to love this film. Especially if you're a Batman fan. It's, honestly, it's perfect. So there you have it, guys. There's my non-spoiler thoughts on the Batman. I might be doing a spoiler talk with this with the guys. We'll potentially... I mean, we were meant to do a spoiler talk for Boba Fett and Uncharted, and now this. It all just spiraled. My job, unfortunately, doesn't allow me to be as consistent as I once was. But they are my non-spoiler thoughts. I really encourage you guys to go and check out the Batman on the big screen because it truly deserves to be seen there. It's such an epic film. And again, if you're a Batman fan, you know, particularly a fan from Batman in the comics and the TV shows, I think this will be the Batman film you kind of always wanted. And again, for me personally, I think what sums up this film perfectly is it is the best version of everything we've seen in the Batman mythos. Character-wise, world-wise, it's just a perfect interpretation. I feel like Matt Reeves is a director who... I wasn't too hot on him, to be honest, when he was announced. I'm not the biggest lover of Matt Reeves as a director. I think he really gets it. You know, I think he really understands Batman. I think he really gets what makes this character tick. And I think we see that on full display here. And again, this is very early days for this version of Batman. I can't wait to see how this develops as time goes on. You know, they are talking about a trilogy with this. And they're already talking about sequel ideas. You know, they've spoken about the Court of Owls, which I think the Court of Owls would be a good choice for this version of Gotham and this version of Batman. And also, they've spoken about Mr. Freeze as well, like doing a grounded version of Mr. Freeze, which I, for one, would be totally down for. I think this is such an exciting time to be a Batman fan, and such an exciting time for this particular film, just to see where it goes and how it grows and how it develops over time. But what did you guys think about the Batman? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy it, or were you a bit meh on it? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see more reviews like this, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.